6 months ago. So that's the asset prices, the change in asset prices that has taken place over the last 2 years. So it makes a lot of sense to raise funds now to convince investors worldwide that the asset prices are low and the return is going to be substantial if you invest now. But it is not going to be easy. I would cite you one particular example. I tried to convince one of the Saudi investors to invest in Pakistan for the acquisition of RBS Bank. And the typical response, first, there was some interest initially, but then they got scared because of what was happening in Karachi when the 2 bomb explosions took place. And the investor just shied away after that. He was keenly interested up to the first explosion. When the second took place, he sent me an email stating very clearly that we cannot invest in a country where the law and order situation is deteriorating by the day. So as Dr. Ishasaz was mentioning, the investor looks for security of capital also, and law and order is one of the key areas. Other than the fact that the asset prices are depressed, Pakistan economy has a very strong potential. No matter whether we like it or not, Pakistan will, inshallah, develop. Goldman Sachs has predicted overnight will have our needs, and we will have to address those needs. And that will be translated into economic progress at some time in future. And I am very hopeful that this will happen very soon, inshallah. Pakistan is a strategically good located country. I don't think there is any other country in this part of the world who has more strategic importance than Pakistan. So it will remain a key focus of all the major economic powers in the world. And we should take advantage of that. I just mentioned the Saudi investors. When I had a conversation with him, I asked him to look at the Pakistani undercurrents. I think that's very important because in front of a lot of chaos that is taking place in front of our eyes, there are very strong undercurrents in Pakistan. You have seen the rise of the judiciary. You have seen the rise of the media. And I personally feel that we have a much more balanced system of accountability than we had a few years ago. And one day, believe me, this will translate into improved governance in this country. We are not seeing it so clearly. It's not still very visible, but it is happening. It has never happened before. And this alone, when I discussed it with the Saudi investor, I told him that please forget about the surface, the situation on the surface. Look at the Pakistani undercurrent, what's happening in the country. And he was more or less convinced before the second bomb explosion took place. So Pakistani society, why this point is so relevant for private equity is that private equity capital is a long-term capital. It will look at all these things. I remember distinctly in 1985 when I was graduating from the US, my brother was opening a restaurant in Lahore and he asked me to contact McDonald's to come to Pakistan. I went to their Chicago headquarters and discussed it with them. And their typical response at that time was that Pakistan is so politically unstable that we will never consider investing in Pakistan. That was 1985. But they did come to Pakistan 15 years later. So I'm very hopeful that Pakistan will attract as we progress along the line. Scope of private equity in Pakistan. First of all, there is not much familiarity with this subject here because of number of reasons. Other asset classes are very popular, but not private equity, and there are reasons for it. It's a long-term capital, and somehow we have developed history of short-termism in Pakistan. Our investors look for quick returns. They do not wait, they do not want to wait for 10 years for a decent return to come to them. So that mindset will have to change in order to have a good private equity culture taking roots in Pakistan. In terms of private equity model in Pakistan, what kind of private equity model will actually prevail in Pakistan? The fundraising will have to be done from abroad. I have no doubt that the Pakistani investors typically, I'm not talking about individual investment, people have made investments which are of private equity nature. I'm talking about a private equity fund. I'm not very optimistic that this will happen in the short term, that individual investor or institutional investor will contribute capital to a private equity fund because they do not want to wait that long. The other main reason is that their own access to fund, for instance, a bank, they do not have 10-year funds with them. So how can they mismatch? If a bank's deposit profile is, say, 2 to 3 years of maturity, then how can it invest, say, 10 years in a private equity venture? Or these funds are typically pension funds. Now look at Chile. What happened in Chile when they unleashed the private pension plans? Lot of the pension funds flew to private equity ventures, and Chile experienced a very high economic growth since then. Our macroeconomic conditions are also not suitable right now. The interest rates are very high. For private equity to flourish, you need to have a very stable and a low interest rate environment. So it will be a while before this particular asset class develops in Pakistan. But there are good opportunities, and I will encourage all of you to at least discuss it as an asset class and get some familiarity with it, because it will be an important source of funding for the Pakistan's economic future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammad Najam Ali, Chief Executive Officer, Next Capital Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, the next topic of discussion in today's seminar is macroeconomic environment and investments. We have here today with us Dr. Amjad Waheed. Dr. Amjad Waheed holds a doctorate in business administration in investment and finance from Southern Illinois University, United States of America. He is a chartered financial analyst. He is presently Chief Executive Officer of NAFA, which is now known as NBP Fullerton Asset Management Limited, which was formerly National Fullerton Asset Management Limited, NAFA. He remained as the head of the equity funds and portfolio at Riyadh Bank, Saudi Arabia, head of investment in National Investment Trust, and Chief Operations Officer of FCAB and Amero Equities. He also remained as Assistant Professor of Finance at Tennessee State University, USA, and has published several articles in top magazines all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I request you all to please welcome our next speaker, Dr. Amjad.